What's up, you guys? It's Sir Scrub here, bringing you some more Scrub Tier Yu-Gi-Oh! And in today's video, we will be taking a look at how to beat Numerons. Before we get into today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please check down in the description for all of the different ways you can support the channel. And while you're there, head on over to the Coalition of Scrubs, where I've partnered with several other content creators to bring you guys amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. But with all that junk out of the way, let's go ahead and jump both feet into today's video. Alright, so starting off, let's go over how I'll be breaking this video down. This video will be divided into three major sections. Section 1 will cover the strengths of the deck, including particular choke points, to allow you to innovate with other cards I haven't mentioned here. The second section will be the different ways you can prepare for this deck when you go first, and the third will cover the different ways you can prepare when going second. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into section 1. So starting off, what makes this deck so powerful that it has the entire community up in arms? Well, it has to do with the very way Konami designed this engine to run. Starting off, you have the field spell Numeron Network. Network is the key card that gets this entire thing running. It allows you to summon up to 4 Numeron XYZ monsters from your extra deck, basically for free. The only cost it has is to send the spell card Numeron Calling to the grave, as well as preventing you from normal or specialing more than one time after it resolves. Now, the Numeron monsters themselves don't do much, but they can make for a surprisingly quick OTK. Basically, their effects allow them to detach a material and double the attack of all other Numerons after the one activating has battle. Network, while copying the effect of Calling, can allow them to do this without having to detach to resolve the effect. However, if this were the only facet of the deck, it wouldn't be nearly as bad as it is currently. The entire engine allows the player to turbo into S0 Utopic Zexal, which can skip the opponent's first 3 turns, which is just absolutely insane, and is the primary reason this engine is being teched into a whole host of slower strategies. Now, for those individual strategies, you'll have to check my other videos, but in the next section, we'll cover the easy part, what to do when you're going first. Now, there are a metric shit ton of ways you can effectively stop this deck when you have the advantage of going first. So let's start with the obvious things. This deck's main goal when going second is to attempt to OTK. So either having interruptions that can negate the field spell will remove their abilities to get into the Numerons, thus preventing the OTK. Or having very few monsters on board, because this deck has to beat over monsters in order to be able to boost its attack. So leaving several monsters on board may actually hurt you because they'll be able to OTK over them. This deck can get up to some pretty big numbers pretty quickly, and then they can just make a link monster afterwards, preventing them from being banished. So the very first thing that comes to my mind when trying to stop this deck is, of course, Solemn Judgment. This is a very easy 1-for-1 negate that simply costs half your life points, but otherwise has no restrictions locking it into a certain playstyle or deck. As well, it may be to your advantage to play this card no matter the deck, even combo decks, because everyone likes the ability to tell their opponent no whenever you need to. As well, if you're playing a heavy combo deck, you want to have insurance against Dark Ruler no more. So this card just being able to stop the field spell right out of the gate, prevent them from even getting their feet on the ground, can be a quick and easy way to protect yourself against this deck. The next card that comes to my mind is Hope Harbinger. This card's ability to simply nope the field spell upon activation can wreck the entire deck's day. Basically, anything that can negate spell cards is what you want to be able to put on board. But what makes Hope Harbinger particularly interesting is it attaches it to itself as material, preventing the opponent from being able to attempt to recycle it from the graveyard. Now, that's not exactly something that the deck really wants to do, but it does remove that away from them as a resource. Now, the next monster I want to bring up is totally awesome. Thanks to Bahamut Shark, this card is fairly generic, basically allowing you to vomit this thing out with any 2 level 4 water monsters, giving you a particularly powerful Omni Negate that can smack the field spell when it attempts to activate. Of course, there are a whole host of other big negate type monsters I could cover here, so I think by now you get the point. Any monster that you can put on board that can negate spell cards can negate the field spell and stop this deck cold. So let's go ahead and move on to the other things that this deck loses to, mostly and in particular The most common floodgates of the game, this deck just hard loses to both there can be only one as well as summon limit, both of which preventing them from vomiting 3+ Numerons onto the board and stopping them from reaching the S0 without some form of back row removal. As well, Artifact Sanctum summoning a Scythe to lock them out of the extra deck can be a godsend play to keep them from being able to pop off. And for that matter, any deck that can set up the Buster Lock can stop this deck cold in its tracks. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to what to do when you go second. So here comes the part of the video you've all been waiting for. How to deal with this deck going second. So let's just go ahead and jump both feet into it. Starting off with hand traps, throughout my playtesting, the funniest and most brutal hand trap I have found success against this deck with is no material. Simply waiting for them to summon their 3 boys from the extra deck and then selecting one and locking it from being used as material may simply end their turn right then and there. They won't be able to use it to go into S0, they won't be able to use it to go into links. It just can simply end their turn. However, there is an interesting dynamic when it comes to Numerons and no material. The Numeron player can choose to play around no material by simply summoning 4 Numerons instead of 3. So that way if you select one, they can just simply use the other 3 to summon the S0. However, doing so opens them up to being wrecked by Nibiru, because summoning 4 monsters, that's 4 summons, the S0 makes the 5th summon, and you can use the Nib to simply tribute it off long before it ever gets the chance to skip your turn. Now, beyond those 2 hand traps, the next MVP hand trap in this matchup is probably Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This card answers the field spell, allowing you to stop their plays hard right at the beginning, removing it from the board long before they can get monsters on board to try and make the S0 lock. As well, Infinite Impermanence can be invaluable when dealing with an already established S0, being able to chain to its activation to negate its effect, allowing you to protect yourself from the turn skip effect. However, the biggest issue with this strategy is the fact that they're probably going to have back row, and thus if there's something like a Solemn Judgment or even a Red Reboot in their back row, Imperm can die to their other forms of protection, so there's that to keep in mind. However, another card that is similar to Imperm in this way is Psyframe Gear Gamma. Like Imperm, it does have the advantage of being immune to Called by the Grave. So the most common hand trap counter is null with this particular card, but it can fall to their other forms of protection, such as Solemn Judgment. But this card even has even more weaknesses being a monster. It can die to basically the entire Solemn Brigade, as well as other forms of just general back row interruption. Any form of counter trap can probably negate this card, though if it does resolve, it does allow you to go straight into a level 8 synchro, allowing you to profit off of negating the S0. So there is that to keep in mind. And the final negate card I want to mention in this matchup is Forbidden Droplets. Now this is probably the most impactful card in this matchup, allowing you to tailor its spell speed force status to play around any forms of protection they may have. Though it does require you to lose quite a bit of card advantage, it does ensure you get a turn, which is considerably better than the alternative. I don't really mind going -3 in card, or -2 in card advantage if I get to play a turn. If I'm able to actually do things, it's worth taking that neg in card advantage. So next we have ways to deal with the S0 without actually negating its effect. This deck can struggle to OTK through an empty board, surprisingly, since the Numerons can only gain their effects when attacking monsters. Though you do run the risk of giving them board control, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type situation. Thus, using a Kaiju or something of the like to out the S0 without being able to make further plays, such as when it uses its effect to negate your turn, basically, Kaijuing it off can ensure that you get your next couple of turns, because it does give them a monster on board, so they're not able to just Numeron engine again and do it all over. You do lose your first turn, and you do run the risk of giving them board control, but it does out the S0, so it's something that you may want to run the cost analysis of before you try and play around with it. But that's all I've got for this one, you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and feel free to share this with a friend. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments section as well. And if you'd like to support the channel one step further, please be sure to check out the description below with all the different ways you can support the channel. And while you're there, head on over to Coalition of Scrubs and check them out. Give all those guys some loves over there. They're all fantastic content creators. But most importantly, don't forget, be a scrub. Peace.